This tutorial is a project of nonprofitaccountingbasics.org, a free resource developed by the Greater Washington Society of CPAs Educational Foundation. Our goal is to encourage accuracy and accountability to help smaller nonprofits successfully manage and sustain their organizations.
Hello, my name is Tom Ciolkosz, and I'm a member of the Greater Washington Society of CPAs Nonprofit Accountability Task Force. Today I'm going to talk to you about preventing nonprofit banking fraud and the tools that you can use. So today, when you look at all the data breaches that are happening in the headlines, things from like the IRS to the US government to JP Morgan Chase to Target, and yes, even our own very Dairy Queen has had data breaches where information has been compromised through various sources. What does a fraudster look like? When fraud's being committed by a person, typically 41% of frauds are happening from the age of 36 to 45, and 80% of those are men. When you look at the next slide here of what happens as it relates to harvesting email, harvesting a hacked email account, they're looking at all types of information, from spamming, where you're getting phishing emails to click on links so that they can get inside of your email account to hack them and send out emails, as well as getting information from those emails, to harvesting information through Facebook, your employment records, your banking, online banking, and actual sales that are being made at the various retailers. This chart gives you a good idea of how it all happens as it relates to an email account being hacked. So what's the definition of social engineering? Social engineering is the context of information security that refers to the psychological manipulation of people into performing actions or divulging confidential information. Phishing is a type of social engineering. And as it relates to phishing, typically what happens is it's acquiring your confidential information by masquerading as a trustworthy entity. So possibly your bank, your retailer, another person that's sending you an email, and within that email is an embedded link, and based on that link, it would then download or upload a virus so that it could then watch your keystrokes and watch what you're doing within your computer. So things to watch for are obviously links to email, spelling and grammar, things that are coming from popular companies, and the email as it relates to creating a sense of urgency. Spoofing is where the spammer sends out an email to your email address, and it looks like it's coming from you. And again, on the slide you shows a copy of what an email would look like. It's going to come into your inbox. It might match up as it relates to your email address or be off slightly, but these are the types of emails that are coming to individuals so that you can click on the links, and then of course it's where the virus is infecting your computer so that it can remember the types of things that you're doing and the places that you're going. So what is keylogging? Keylogging is basically spyware or monitoring software. It's the equivalent of digital surveillance. So every time that you click on your keyboard, type, download, go somewhere as it relates to the internet, like to your online banking account, it's going to remember the places that you go and the actual keystrokes that you're making. So if you're going to a bank website and you type in something in the first field, typically that would be your user ID, and then the second is the password. And so it's remembering these types of things and keeping that information for the fraudsters that are trying to get your information. Keyloggers spread in much of the same way as malicious programs spread, excluding cases where keyloggers are purchased and installed like a jealous spouse or partner. Keyloggers are happening by security services. Keyloggers are installing on your system where you open a file or attachment or receive an email, text, instant message, or social networks. Keyloggers can also just be installed by visiting a website of a site that's infected. How do you detect a keylogger? Keyloggers are very difficult to detect. So how can you protect yourself, just as you would maintain your own health on a daily basis. There are many websites out there that you can go to download antivirus software, and the key thing is keeping it up to date. So a lot of you are probably familiar with Catch Me If You Can. It was a movie by Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks, where this gentleman portrayed himself as a fraudster and had the ability to manufacture checks so that these checks would look like they came from American Airlines, another bank, a doctor's office, and he would go through and whitewash the checks. So instead of them being for $100, he'd make them for $10,000, and he would manufacture identification and a whole series of things so that he could obtain monies illegally. He's somewhat quite popular person. His name was Frank Abagnale, and he worked for the FBI for 10 or 15 years after that they caught him, arrested him. They used him in doing additional training. So the types of frauds that happen typically with check fraud is where a fraudster accesses money to create a counterfeit check and getting your check stock or creating a new check stock. So when you're looking at this particular check, you see that it has routing numbers, account numbers, and then in the top left-hand corner would be where the name and address of the person would go. To prevent this type of check fraud, there's a product that's called Positive Pay. This is where you would upload to your financial institution and tell them what types of checks to pay, the check number, the dollar amount, and who the payee is. And this will protect you from having checks come through for the wrong amount or checks come through that were never written by you. In the event that you forget to write down or upload a check, it does create a reject report where you're able to then approve those rejects so that the items can get paid or not get paid. Another type of check fraud is through remote deposit capture or a mobile phone. This is where a check is double debiting. As an example, an organization would have a check. It would be deposited through their remote deposit capture, and then the fraudster, typically someone internally, would then take that check and change the dollar amount and or make the check payable to a person and then deposit it through the old-fashioned means, meaning going to the bank and actually depositing the check. And in theory, they would get credit once through the normal channel of how they were giving credit, and then the fraudster would be taking it through a second channel. And then if the writer of the check doesn't balance their checks, maybe except on a monthly basis, it would take 30 to 60 days to actually find out this was happening. Another type of fraud is ACH fraud. The fraudsters target nonprofit organizations in search of trying to get bigger payouts. They would steal their online banking credentials through the earlier methods that I talked about with phishing and spamming them to get their to track their logging of their bank user ID and password. Once they have the credentials, they're then able to send out ACHs or wires from those bank accounts to the fraudsters' accounts wherever they may be. In addition, they would also be able to create files from outside the organization where they're coming inside to actually debit the person's account. The solution here would be ACH Positive Pay. This allows a client to assign a filter or block the ability to have monies taken out of the account. So in theory, if the only types of debits coming from your account are American Express and for your Verizon phone bill, you would then only allow those two companies to debit your account, and then you can set up a dollar amount where if it's typically a $5,000 a month debit, you can put a cap of that charge of no more than $5,001 as an example. Another way to protect your online banking environment is through creating a secure connection to your bank. As an example, Trust Defender is a lockdown of the actual entry point to your bank. So what this does is it creates a portal that goes from your laptop to the bank and would not or will not allow anyone else to jump on or attach to that portal that you're communicating with your bank. So it's done through locking down your browser and blocking any and other internet traffic, including email. Again, this is a way to protect your online banking environment. Another way is through two-party factor authentication. The best way to use this is to communicate to your bank when it's sending you your password and or approving a computer. So as we talked about earlier, if your email account's being hacked and the fraudsters are in your email account, having the bank email you your password is probably a bad idea, because if the fraudsters are already in there, then they're able to get your new password. So we highly recommend that you use a two-factor authentication process where it's actually texting it to your cell phone or calling your cell phone. Therefore, you then would put in that code, which then is approving the IP address that that computer is using at that time. Another way is to educate your employees. Obviously, having an education program to work with, letting your employees know what the best types of passwords that are available. In the example here, it lists 4 different scenarios on passwords. And the fraudsters, because they're harvesting this information through your email account, through your Facebook and LinkedIn sites, they're having things like your date of birth, your mother's maiden name, your anniversary date. And when you look at the third selection for a password, May 2009 Marie, that's very possible the year that the person was married and their spouse's first name. So it should be a series of numbers and letters, upper and lower case, as in the fourth option listed. The next thing you want to do is always look at unexplained account or network activity. You can do this through signing up for alerts from your bank that will alert you on a daily basis of what your balance is, if large dollar transactions are happening, if you're overdrawing your account, or if deposits or withdrawals are being made. In the example here listed, we're suggesting that you reconcile your operating account on a daily basis. And this would be through you going to your online banking environment and watching whatever activity is taking place. The traditional of yesteryears, where someone would get their bank statement at the end of the month and then within the next 30 days balancing their statement, is certainly not a very good idea, as things could have already happened, and over a period of 30 days a lot can happen. Last thing is you want to talk to your banker about programs that are safeguard for unauthorized transactions. As I spoke earlier about positive pay and other services that the bank offers through authentication, and having persons approve wires, ACHs, and the different types of transaction on your account are critical. Again, recapping positive pay. Positive pay is an anti-fraud service offered by most banks. It's a general term that's being used throughout the industry that can protect businesses against altered checks and counterfeit check stock. It basically is uploading to the bank the activity from the business as it relates to matching the account number, check number, and dollar amounts presented to the bank. And as I said, the ACH positive pay comes through either blocking all transactions and or filtering, where you're only allowing certain types of transactions with certain types of dollar amounts. And then again, remembering that you'll always have the ability to pay or return exception items. So this is probably the single most important slide for anyone. Under the Electronic Funds Transfer Act, also known as Regulation E, in 1978, it was established for rights and liabilities for consumers, as well as the financial institutions. So most folks are familiar with if your a debit card or credit card got stolen, or if there was fraudulent activities on your bank, that you are limited to losses of no more than $50, provided that you notify your banks within 2 days. So this is the consumer protection that's afforded through Regulation E. For businesses, organizations, and nonprofits, there's currently no type of loss protection for commercial checking account customers. So what this means is if your account, debit card, credit card has fraudulent activity, most institutions are not offering any type of protection unless you agree to the earlier products and services that I talked about, like Positive Pay and ACH filters. So it's very important to keep your accounts secure with your banking institution and checking with your banker as it relates to what type of products and services are available to protect your funds. Lastly, here's a couple of links and places that you can go for resources. The ACFE Fraud Prevention Checkup is a great handout. If you go to the Greater Washington Society of CPAs and click on the Nonprofit Accounting Basics website, there's a lot of information. And then finally, if you go to the Federal Communications Commission, they have 10 cybersecurity strategies for businesses. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for participating in the webinar. If you have additional questions, feel free to contact me and or go through the Nonprofit Accounting Basics website. Thank you